Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima and I want to talk to you about Monolith again. I've talked about this game before, but frankly it's a really good game and I think it deserves to be talked about again. That and I've got a decent enough reason. They actually released an expansion for it. And I didn't know this was coming. I was literally browsing around the store on Christmas Day and just looking for something to buy with some Christmas money that I got. And then this jumped out at me because I searched for Monolith thinking, oh, I wonder how deep of a sale it's on today. And it was $5. There was also a second entry in the search bar that told me there was a DLC coming literally the day after. So I bought the DLC immediately. Of course I did. And now we're just going to play a few rounds of it here. I'm not actually playing this live, by the way. This is post-commentary because good luck to me trying to play Monolith in live commentary because, good lord, the bullet hell side of this game has massively increased this time around. Like, it is impressively hard. Although, I did actually manage to beat the game for the first time thanks to a weapon that I believe an area that was added via the DLC gave me, which is very good. But anyway, if you don't know what Monolith is, it's basically the Binding of Isaac formula. It's a twin-stick shooter with roguelite elements. You wander around, you look for upgrades in the maze, and you try and get to the end and defeat the bosses. You have to beat mini-bosses on every floor before the boss room unlocks. You can also do things like grab upgrades. You can also grab different weapons, which are procedurally generated based on a series of keywords. You also have bombs, which do exactly what you think they would do if you think of it in a bullet hell sense. They get rid of the majority of the bullets, knock enemies back, and generally just make things easier on you. If you thought Binding of Isaac was bullet hell based on its first few stages, wait until you see some of this shit. Like, watch what I'm about to go up against right now in the video. This is one of the new things in the DLC, I believe. And it wipes the floor with me. Although, not really. It's still, yeah, like, look at that. The Binding of Isaac wouldn't dare to throw something like this at you in the first stage. That's just, like, silly. But yes, the game itself was very good without the DLC at the very least. And there's a few things that are likable about it. It's got a very subdued sense of humor. The gameplay is really well done. It's really well optimized. It fits in like 100 meg, so it's tiny. And there's a fair few bosses, each with their own challenging patterns, and the game itself is quite hard to beat. As I said, before the DLC, I had like anywhere between 8 to 10 hours in it. And I still didn't manage to finish the game once. In the Binding of Isaac, you'll probably get your first win within the first couple of hours. But we're here to talk about the downloadable content, which actually does a lot. Like, seriously, I've been playing this DLC for about 3 hours and I'm still not even close to seeing even all the stuff they advertised on the store page. Like, it's got new enemies, new bosses, 2 new floors, infinite looping, 40 unique weapons, cartridges, blessings, practice mode, new playable characters, which I don't even know what that's about. How do you even get new playable characters in a game like this? I don't know, but I'll be finding out eventually, hopefully. They also added minigames in the form of hacking, which is like silly. It's kind of silly just how it works. And you can even do like a little endless version of it in the main menu and just practice the hacking minigames if you like. It's great. But yeah, I've been playing the DLC for 3 hours and I just want to say that it's some of the best DLC that I think I've seen for a game. Now, it doesn't change too much about the very core of Monolith, but it definitely adds a lot. Notably, there are a bunch of things from the... Yeah, I just hit some spikes down. I was quite frustrated about it. Notably, there's a few things in the game that weren't touched, like the upgrade terminals, well, I say the shops, but it would be a spoiler to go too much in depth into how that's actually changed. And some of the basic weapons, they added new weapon types, but they've more or less left all the old stuff alone, which is interesting. But all the stuff they added is fantastic. Like, there's cartridges, which are basically just new separate benefits that you can get via sacrificing ammo, which is interesting. Don't know why. Well, there are some things that you do not want to do that with. Some weaponry, for example, if you get a really good weapon. But yeah, there's blessings and curses, which change weapons dramatically. Like, I played with a cursed weapon, I believe it was in the 3rd run of this video, which makes it so that you take double damage, but the weapon has infinite ammo and you can't get rid of it under the normal circumstances. So it makes things just a little bit harder for yourself, but it gives you a bloody awesome weapon at the end of it. Unfortunately, I think it may have led to my death. Well, you'll see eventually. But yeah, you get new weapon types, you get new floors. The bloody temple, which is one of the new floors, I believe I actually go into in the first run here. And it feels completely different to all the rest of the game. Choosing your individual paths, choosing what to fight, and then going back and having to fight off an entirely new boss in order to actually escape the temple alive is an interesting concept. It was thanks to this that I managed to actually win. Unfortunately, I didn't actually manage to get the super cool, awesome weapon you get from the final boss of the temple. In this video, I did actually manage to get it on an actual run, and that's what got me to the end of it. But yeah, they give you all sorts of new stuff. Like, these rooms here, these are called shortcuts. And sometimes they aren't even shortcuts. Sometimes they give you these little deals here. Like, I'll give you something, but you need to give me 40% of your ammo. And that is a really interesting concept. Having to lose weapons quicker in exchange for getting a benefit. There is one benefit that I believe I take later on in this video, but that one clearly wasn't worth it to me. Basically, it's just an expansion of everything outwards from the original game mechanics. Almost to the point where you could easily turn off the DLC and have the game feel completely different. There are some things I actually really appreciate about the way they've gone about this, like how they haven't touched a lot of the vanilla stuff. But honestly, after having played this, I don't think I can go back to the vanilla gameplay. Those room layouts really do make a difference. Even like with the 8 to 10 hours I put into the game previously, I was starting to feel like I was reaching the end of it. But man, they were dropping in those new room layouts. They were dropping in those new room layouts like salt on chips. So they were making it. They were giving me all sorts of new ways to play around with it. And with all the new enemies, it introduces a ton of new ways to basically screw the player over. They've given you a lot of new enemies, and they all have like a massive difference on the way the game is played. I was starting to, like, even with like the regular set of enemies, that all the new enemies are combined what did I say flawlessly? Like seamlessly, that's the word I'm looking for. They all combine seamlessly with the old ones and make things very difficult to deal with indeed. This entire temple level actually reminds me of the Binding of Isaac, like how you got to the cathedral. It kind of reminds me of that level. It's a little weird. But yeah, they've got all sorts of new enemies and bosses and stuff to deal with. And I appreciate they also added the ability to replay bosses. So if you're having trouble on the final one, you can just go and give them a go with the default weapon set, if only to help you learn how to dodge. Because that's definitely the most important thing in this one, considering that most of the new enemies have ridiculous amounts of bullets this time. It means that you really do have to work on being able to avoid massive bullet storms. However, they've made one particularly massive change to the gameplay this time around that makes it easier for you, but at the same time makes it a lot harder. So you get your bombs, which serve to destroy bullets and push enemies back and basically get you out of tough situations. In this game, however, in the DLC, in the original game, I should say, we'll talk about the original game first. In the original game, you had a limited amount of bombs, and you would have to find them all in the levels. You wouldn't actually get bombs back. But in the DLC, they've made it so that you actually recharge bombs. So every few rooms, you get an extra bomb back to help you avoid like massive sets of bullets. This is a really interesting change because the original Monolith was a bit tough, and having your bombs be your general what's the word I'm looking for? Having your bombs be your get out of jail free card was interesting, but at the same time you felt bad about using them mainly because of the idea that they were limited, and you wouldn't know whether or not you might actually need them later on. But this new change actually lets you be a little bit more free with your bombs, and it actually makes you feel better about using them when you're in trouble. Like, oh, I can get out of taking a hit right now, but it means I won't have it for a boss that I'm having a particular amount of trouble with. That's not so much a thing anymore. And it means that they can actually go a bit more crazy with the difficulty, because they can at least guarantee that you'll have 1 or 2 bombs kicking around at some point. And you can also increase the maximum amount of bombs you regenerate, which is also great. So if you feel yourself struggling a bit with if you find yourself struggling a bit with a certain boss, just save your bombs for him. It's that simple. If you find yourself trapped by a bunch of enemies in a really difficult room, you can use it there and you'll have it back within a few extra rooms. I actually really appreciate it, because it means it gives players more of a reason to use their bombs. And they can make the game more difficult and not feel as bad about it, especially in bullet pans like this, which are utterly ridiculous sometimes. Although I am quite proud of the fact that I managed to get the warden as damaged as I did before I died, considering this was literally the second time I faced him, and I was doing it with the default gun, which is not the best, especially when you don't get that one upgrade that makes it better. But yeah, the game is still as difficult as ever. You still have to hyper dash around everything. You still have to do really intense dodges through swarms of bullets, and it makes you feel like God whenever you get through a really difficult room. They've also, I don't know if it's because I actually managed to finish the game and they added a bunch of interesting stuff in the expansion, or if it's just stuff that I unlocked by actually beating the game, but man, they give you a lot of really interesting things, like wandering into a shop arena and then having to fight off a shop boss, because that's a thing. It's also really difficult. It's like one of the most difficult bosses in the game. I don't even remember having that much trouble with the goddamn Overlord. Things like, well, I know that the question mark rooms that the green question mark rooms that you get, they give you like random power-ups. Those are new, but they're also actually quite a savior. Having the shortcuts as well, actually. Like, the shortcuts are interesting too, because they wouldn't work in the old game. Most of the shortcuts don't have anything in them that are worth taking, but now that you've got 2 regenerating bombs, you can afford to bomb more efficiently, and it means you can also start looking for secret rooms more often as well. I don't know what the formula is behind secret rooms in this game, but yeah, it basically just encourages you to use bombs more, which is a very positive change for, well, me personally, and I imagine for the entirety of the game, because it means that you can get used to them quicker, you can make more liberal use of them if you're in a tough situation. It just works great. It's such a minor change, but it really does change the way the game is played. And despite the fact that the game's very basic core gameplay hasn't really changed, being able to use bombs more liberally, having more things dotted around the place, having tons of new rooms that do new things, like there's a ton more moving block rooms to deal with in the DLC that are not exactly something that show up very often in the main game, at least to my knowledge and remembrance. But yeah, they absolutely have a bunch of new rooms that fiddle with ways of maneuvering that you need to get used to, and I really appreciate it. It's an absolutely fantastic expansion. Has all the good stuff from the old game, adds a bunch of stuff from the new game, and adds a bunch of new stuff that doesn't feel out of place at all. I've really been enjoying this expansion. I would fully recommend it. It's available now on Steam for $10, which is like the regular price of the base game. Yeah, the regular game's price is like $11.50, but it's on sale right now because of the Steam sale. But I don't know if this video will be coming out on time for that, but we'll see. I might rearrange my Sakura Wars video so that this one comes out faster. But yeah, I still fully recommend Monolith, and I'm actually really happy to see that the expansion happened, because this game came out like 3 years ago at this point. According to Steam, it came out halfway through June of 2017, so it's 2.5 years old. I was worried that I was never going to get an expansion. In fact, they kind of stopped patching it for a surprisingly long amount of time. But then they started doing ups and patches again, and I noticed, because I keep this game on my GPD Win 2, so every time I turn that on, I noticed when things get updated, and Monolith was on it, and it had an update, so I was like, oh, that's a good sign. I wonder if, that's a good sign. I wonder if they're actually doing anything with it. And it turns out they were, because, again, I was really surprised by the expansion coming out. And it still looks, sounds, and runs great. And another thing that I want to bring notion to as well is that they've actually opened up on the humor a little bit. Like, I played through a fair amount of the original Monolith, and a lot of the characters were kind of quiet, but thanks to the fact that they've got, like, certain things... I didn't even realize that guy was an enemy at first, which is why I ran straight into him and lost some health. But yeah, they've got things like little characters that you run into a lot more often, like the negotiation guy that we saw earlier on in the video. Some enemies actually turn up in the shops and, like, in the world after you buy them to just, like, let you talk to them. And there's this one great little bit of humor that I love. So one of the things about the main game is that it has things called vaults, which are locked by keys, which are hidden somewhere in the level. And in the shop, there was this floating skull. And I talked to the skull, and he said, oh, I've been saving up for the key for ages. I'm finally going to get to see what's in the vault. I had enough money to buy the key. So I went and I bought it, and I went back and I talked to him, and he's like, you bought the key? Why did you do this to me? Wait, no, I have a plan. It's okay. I know what I'm going to do. And he follows you into the vault room. And the vault room was actually a unique vault room that I'd never seen before, which was really interesting, actually. And yeah, it was just like, it was, I'm not making it sound as funny as it was, because the skeleton sounded really happy and then really desperate when you talked to him. And I can't, like, I can't give you a great idea of that because I don't remember exactly how it went. But it was just a nice little bit of world building that I really appreciate. I also managed to finish the game for the first time, and whoop, that's my phone going off. Holy shit, that's loud. Oh god, what was I saying? I don't know if this was a benefit for just finishing the game in the base game or not, but I also got a pet ghost, which I go and say hi to every now and again, and it just gives me a ghostly squeal every time. But they make the text move up and down in a way that's really charming. A lot about this game's presentation is charming, and they've just, like, turned it up a bit for the expansion as well, which I still, like, massively appreciate. I appreciate everything about this DLC. This DLC is the way you do it. You change things to make the game better and expand your options, while at the same time also adding new stuff that feels thoroughly different and enjoyable. And gives you a lot more playtime and a lot more variety without feeling overdone. Like, those 2,000 room layouts, man, they really help. You have no idea how much those help. And things like having the mini games to break up the monotony now. I think we see one or two of them towards the end of this video. Things like having those mini games. Things like having blessed and cursed weapons to add that little bit of extra challenge. And they do everything right. It's not like a Binding of Isaac expansion, for example, where they can add items, but some of these items might either be really terrible or really great. In this game, like, some of those, like, items, like, weapons being really good or really bad don't matter too much because your ammo is always limited. And the game itself is just more difficult on a base level in comparison to something like the Binding of Isaac. It's not a game where picking up an item or not picking up an item can make or break your run. It's more reliant on the difficulty, so getting a bad weapon isn't too bad because by the next floor you'll be able to swap it out and you'll even get a little bit of a bonus for it. So even if they do add, like, stuff that turns out to be bad, at least it'll be, like, you know, something you can immediately get rid of. And they warn you before you run into something like a cursed item. So it's not like you'll have to suffer for not knowing what's going to happen. So yeah, basically everything they've added to this expansion, from the new content to the updated content to all of the other things that just have gone into this expansion. And I haven't even seen all of it yet. And I'm hoping that I will eventually get to all of it. Like, I can't help but wonder what the hell they're going to do with the new playable characters, but frankly, the game was good enough for me to play it for 8 to 10 hours on the regular ship anyway, despite not getting a single win. So, I just can't help but wonder what is left in stock for this game and how they plan to update it in the near future. Like, I was really worried that this game was gone, man. As I said before, 2.5 years without so much as a peep, and then dropping a DLC update on you as a good Christmas present, actually. A really, really nice Christmas present. To just have that be dropped on me was actually one of the best things I got for Christmas this year. I gotta admit. I also got a new phone, and I actually have my first car now, if you're wondering, so that's a thing. But, yeah, I would absolutely recommend Monolith, and I would absolutely recommend the Monolith and the Relics of the Past bundle, which they've actually put up on Steam now. Although, actually, I'm going to have to do some math here. So it's well, this is in Australian dollars because, you know, that's just a thing. But if I do that, yeah, it's the same as buying both of them separate. Okay, but yeah, I would wholeheartedly recommend buying this game and the DLC if you haven't done it yet. I don't think it's come out on any other platforms like Switch, although admittedly it would be a pretty good candidate for that. It's a very lightweight game. But yeah, I wholeheartedly recommend it. It is a fantastic bullet hell roguelike shooter, very reliant on player skill, but it's still pretty welcoming, and like, I've been playing it more than I have like any other roguelike. I actually, you know what, I'm gonna say it. I like this better than The Binding of Isaac. I'm gonna be perfectly honest with you. I like this way better than The Binding of Isaac. And you've heard all the reasons in the past 20 minutes. So there's still like 35 minutes of content left on this video, so I'm just gonna let that play out, alright? Because, well, I recorded all this footage. I don't know what else I'd do with it. This has been Blue Maxima. I'm going to change the audio levels after I stop talking so you can also listen to this game's absolutely great music. It absolutely feels like a retro throwback without feeling lazy or underwhelming, which I thoroughly appreciate. I'll see you all next time.